Sefirot, part 4. We are in volume 1, part 4, chapter 6, item 19. As a preparation for the lesson, we are going to read from the words of Rav. Rav said these words: everybody looks at the text and listens to Rabash's words. We also try to understand the text and to enter it into it. What does he want here? Altogether, he didn't just come to teach us words of wisdom, Sefirot, or qualities. Rather, he wishes to convey more inner things. Again, everybody looks at the text and listens to Rabash's words. We also try to understand the text and to enter into it. What does he want here? Altogether, he didn't just come to teach us words of wisdom, Sefirot, or qualities. Rather, he wishes to convey to us more internal matters. We're going to read item 19 in chapter 6, part 4 of volume 1. There are 5 inner lights and 5 surrounding lights in the 10 Sefirot of Rosh. But there are only 5 inner and 2 surrounding, Yechidah and Chaya, from the Peh of Ak downward. However, you should know that in all the lights, worlds, and Partzufim, from the Chotem of Adam Kadmon upward, in every Partzuf, these phases are always complete. They are 5 inner lights, consisted of 10 inner Sefirot, and 5 surrounding lights, consisting of 10 particular Sefirot. Yet, from the Peh of Adam Kadmon down to the end of all the worlds, there are only 5 inner lights and 2 upper surrounding lights, corresponding to Chaya and Yechidah, not more, as the light was diminished from there onward. Thus, in the world of Akudim, which are the lights that emerge from the Peh of Adam Kadmon outwards, there were only 5 inner lights and 2 surrounding lights, and not more. Remember this forward. Let's connect to the lesson.
We find, because of that, I'm speaking here what concerns item 18. I explained what he was saying. No, sorry. 19. So what did we learn? I want to say that when we say surroundings in the guf, they are received in the internality. The light that came with a screen and a coarseness, but on phase 1 he says it's the vessel of Chaya. And how does the vessel of Chaya concerning Zeranpin, it's Neshama, which is a higher degree. Chaya is 2 degrees, that's why it's called surrounding of the surrounding. Malchut doesn't receive anything from here anymore. Why didn't it have more than 2 surroundings? We're learned. Usually there's 5 internal lights and 5 surroundings. So why here there are only 2? He says because Malchut, Chochmah is called phase 1, coarseness of phase 1, and reception of Ak that doesn't shine below. Now we learn that Malchut ascended to Chokhmah. So it makes Zeir Anpin stand at the degree of Keter. Keter is adjacent to the Rosh until it can't receive any illumination from phase 1. That's why they're still surrounding to Zeir Anpin, but not Malchut. Afterwards, when Zeir Anpin was refined, meaning coarseness of phase 1, and the coupling on the coarseness of root came out, the light of Malchut, so that is a higher degree. For that reason, the light doesn't expand downward. We find, on behalf of the surroundings of the guf, there are no more than 2 surrounding lights. Why? If it could perform a coupling in Ak and expand below, so Malchut would receive another surrounding light. And then there would be a coupling on behalf of Keter, and Malchut would get more surrounding light. But since they're refined, there is no coarseness. That's why they can't receive. Soon we'll see what he's asking here. What does it say in 60? That from the peh of Ak and below, there are no more than 5 internal lights and 2 surrounding. Meaning, in the 10 Sefirot of the guf, that extend from above downward to clothe in the vessels, there are no more than 2 surrounding upper lights, which are Chaya and Yechida. The reason is because the deficiency of the external vessels that need the surrounding lights of Naran. Because the externality of the vessels to receive the surrounding lights come on the coupling of striking during the refinement and ascent to the emanator. Because the coupling by striking doesn't happen from phase 1 and above, there couldn't be more than 2 external vessels, Chaya and Yechida. So what is he explaining now? We have to know, what does he mean by externality of a vessel? Internality is called phase 4. 3 is more external. 2 is even more external, meaning less coarseness. We find, how do the surroundings get revealed in the guf? When the coupling is on the externality of the vessel, meaning phase 3 is more external to 4 because it gets 1 surrounding. 2 is called 2 phases more external than Malchut, so it gets 2 surrounding lights. Now Zeir Anpin, which is phase 3, phase 2 is called 1 external, phase 1 is called the 2nd external he has. So we can see that since that external didn't have enough coarseness to extend the surrounding light to Malchut, that's why Malchut remains with 2 surrounding lights. And Zeir Anpin also remains with 2 surrounding lights, what we just learned, because it's adjacent to the Rosh, as he mentions. Meaning, why in the guf are there no more than 2 surrounding lights? So he says, the 10 Sefirot of guf that extend from above downward to clothe in the vessels, there are no more than 2 external upper ones, which are Chaya and Yechida. And the reason is because the deficiency of the external ones need the lights of the surrounding of Naran that could shine in them, because the externality of the vessels to receive the surrounding lights for the lower ones come out on the coupling by striking that happen while the screen is refining and ascending to the emanator. Because phase 1 refined, the coupling by striking only happens from phase 1 and above. That's called the first look of Ak. That's why there couldn't be more than two external vessels, Chaya and Yechida. So what are the external vessels here? External, screen, and coarseness. It's called more refined compared to the lower one. So when he says here, he explains that the surrounding lights in the guf aren't called surrounding. Surrounding is only what you get from an external vessel. It's difficult to understand. What's difficult? Phase 4, that had the degree of Keter, is called Bokeh. Phase 3 that has the degree of Chokhmah, since phase 3 is more external, it's higher than Malchut, and it receives a surrounding light. Phase 2, that could only come out on degree of Bina, the degree of Neshama, is called external. To who? To Zeranpin. Why? Because it's worse, its coarseness is higher. Until you say that the external, called phase 1, the Zeranpin can receive from it. What was the reason? Here it's the opposite, meaning we learned that where there's more coarseness it could get a higher degree, and here it means the opposite. Here he sees according to order of direct light. Then Malchut, on phase 4, shouldn't receive a true light until there's a degree of Keter. That's why it only gets illumination of the surrounding light. Zeranpin, which now will have the ability to receive, there has to be a coupling on phase 3, then it has wholeness. If the coupling happens on phase 2, it can't reach the light. How do you say? The degree of Bina. So there's an opposite value here. If the coupling that was made on the phase of the vessel of Chokhmah, which is external, I'll explain it better. Here it means that it gives us a certain order according to the direct light and not according to coarseness. In the direct light we learn that while the light appears in two vessels, so what did we have in the vessel of Chokhmah? The light of Nefesh. In the vessel of Keter, the light of Ruach. In the vessel of Bina, while it shined in Chokhmah, Bina had nothing. Now in the reflected light, the same thing. While the coupling on phase 1 needs to illuminate on phase 2, so phase 2 can only shine as a surrounding light. According to the line of direct light, that means while the direct light comes from Keter till Zeranpin, was there anything in the vessel of Malchut? Nothing. That's why he says that now we're speaking of the screens. On the coupling of phase 3, also Malchut of Ab couldn't receive. Malchut could receive only a surrounding. But it's hard to understand, so he says afterwards, no, it's not clear yet. Let's start in item 20. Know that when Keter ascended to the emanator, to the same extent and due time when he ascended, then Malchut, the revelation of Yechidah departed from her, which is the light that was extended from the Keter. Why? Because the Keter would ascend and depart. It didn't have an intention to illuminate in her, but the record itself remained in her. So what's written here? Before Malchut had a revelation of Yechidah, what does that mean? Now, when the Keter ascended to the emanator, it departed because there was a revelation of Yechidah. So, what should we know here? With which Malchut are we speaking? What Keter are we speaking about? Let's see below what he explains. So, in 70 he says, after phase 4 refined, before the screen performed a coupling on phase 3, we then find the Partzuf without any illumination, because phase 4, which is the light of Keter, departed, and the degree of phase 3 didn't come yet. So that we can still understand. But what did he mean? Malchut departed from revelation of Yechidah. So what's the allegory? The Sefirot. That was the light that extends from Keter. Since when Keter departs, so what does that mean? Again, since the Keter ascended and departed, it didn't intend to illuminate in her. So what's he saying? I'd say the opposite. Since it didn't intend to illuminate her, that's why it departed. So what's he saying here? And he even mentioned that the Keter departed and a record was left in Malchut. So then he says in item 80, you shouldn't ask whether it's contradicting what I mentioned above, that Malchut didn't leave a record after her. What's written here? That a record did remain in Malchut. So the answer was, there he's speaking about the records of direct light that are incorporated in the screen while coming to the emanator, where the coupling of phase 2 caught up, the second expansion caught up. Here he's speaking about a record that relates to the light of Malchut, which is the phase of reflected light. We mentioned earlier, what was the question? There's a question and an answer. The question is that we learned if Malchut receives, it lays a reshimo, a record, and a direct record it doesn't leave. But the record of what it had remains, meaning a record of what she had. So let's talk about 80 again. He mentioned that Keter would depart. We learned, I'll start over. Item 20 above. Know that when Keter ascended to the emanator, then to the same extent, and as time went by, it would ascend. Then Malchut departed from the revelation of Yechidah, which is the light that extends from the Keter. we learn when the light of Keter comes to the vessel of Keter, so what light did Malchut have? Yechida of Nefesh. Since the light of Nefesh went through 5 vessels, there are 5 phases. We find that the vessel from the light of Keter is Yechida of Nefesh. Then he says, that since the Keter would ascend and depart, it didn't intend to illuminate in her. That's why it departed. It didn't have the light of Yechida of Keter anymore. But it did leave a record. So then below, he asks, in item 80, you shouldn't say it's contradicting that Malchut didn't leave a record after her. There, he's speaking exactly from the records of direct light that incorporate in the screen while coming to the emanator, that there's a second expansion called Ab. So what does he explain? There he's saying that the screen that ascended to the Rosh, while the Malchut didn't have a record of direct light, but only reflected light. That's why, how many records does it have? The last phase is lost. If there was a coupling on phase 4, so phase 3 illuminates with direct light. Now that it extended on Malchut to phase 3, so it didn't have direct light. That was incorporated in the second phase of direct light. Once more, Malchut is called receiving in order to receive 1. While Malchut has a screen on coarseness, that's the Malchut we're talking about. This Malchut called a screen on coarseness doesn't receive direct light on its own behalf, but after the restriction, Malchut only had reflected light. On which phase did she perform reflected light? So we say on phase 4. If the screen was phase 4, the degree of Keter would shine there. After it refines in phase 4, there was phase 3. So he says, what does it mean, phase 3? Why did the second Partzuf not come out also from the degree of Keter? So he says, the last phase is lost. Which last phase is lost? What? Malchut was on phase 3. It had a screen. That was lost. What does it have? From Zeranpin and above. Which is phase 3. That is direct light. Now, when we say that the coupling on phase 3 is on phase 3, so Malchut, that is now called Malchut, doesn't have phase 3 on direct light, but on reflected light. We're speaking on behalf of the records. When phase 3 was refined, Malchut ascended to phase 2. It ascended from the records of phase 2. Let's say the Partzuf Sag. Also, if we speak about Malchut, that it didn't have more than reflected light, that phase 2 in the record it had before, one more phase which is a bit less. So we find, when we say that the last phase is lost, meaning Malchut that put a screen on 4, 3, 2, 1, that was lost, meaning there were no records. The records remained from what it had above. Above, it's called direct light. I'll say what I'm asking here. If we're speaking about Malchut, and it has from Zeranpin and above, so understand that Malchut has reflected light, and above there's direct light. So that works till phase 3, and phase 4 she doesn't have anymore. So let's take the Parzuf Ab, that there is coarseness of phase 3. That Malchut has direct light of phase 3 or not? She put a screen only on phase 3. We find that what the last phase loses, meaning she cannot put a screen on phase 4. She has no light for that. That's why we'll take it another step. Parzuf Sag, Malchut refined and ascended to Rosh of Ab. We say, what was in Malchut of Ab? On the Sefirot of Malchut, of direct light of phase 3? No. Just from her and above, what did we have? 2. That's why we say that Malchut of Ab, that ascends upward from her records, the last phase is lost. Phase 2 and phase 3 that she couldn't extend only on the records of direct light on phase 2. That's why Malchut is always empty. Malchut always has no light. What she has from the record of phase 4 she extends, and she doesn't remain in the direct light of the phase she extends. She extends and performs a screen on phase 3. So we find that Malchut always remained empty on her own behalf, since on her own phase there is nothing more than reflected light. Doesn't matter what degree I'm speaking about, whether 4, 3, or 2, it's always the same thing. And actually I think that the direct light she does have is from her and up. With these records, she extends a degree afterwards, and she always remains with no light. What's the only thing? Reflected light. That's why it explains what I'm saying. A record of reflected light remains a record on behalf of Yechidah. What does that mean? We'll see soon.
Where were we? Let's start with 21, huh? We'll talk about this here. We learn that Malchut has 5 internal ones and 2 surrounding ones. The 5 internal ones, we said that it illuminates in Keter. So it has what? The revelation of Yechidah. Now that phase 4 has been refined through the beating of internal and surrounding, and the coupling was made upon phase 3, we learned that she receives something from phase 3. The addition to what was before. After all, before everything departed. What is the addition? It turns out the addition is to the record. She only receives the illumination of surrounding. What does he want to express here? It is Malchut of Ab, after all. Here we're talking about the recognition of vessels. The recognition of the vessel is called that the light departed from her. Therefore, he says, as long as the light did not depart the 3 phases, it is still considered that it receives some record, some illumination from the vessel. Hence, when it departs, also the 2 surrounding, and it has nothing else, it has nothing. Then there's a recognition of a vessel. So he explains to us where she receives a new surrounding, since from what was before, a record remained. Hence, when it came later, the surrounding, where did it enter? Into the vessel of Malchut that has a record. Not a record of direct light, a record of reflected light. So we need to start the letter 21. When Keter concluded his concealment, when the coarseness, when the light emerged upon the coarseness of the screen of phase 4 and completed its ascent, and Malchut concluded her ascent to the siyum of Yesod, to the ending of Yesod, then the emanator illuminated in Malchut, in the phase of Yechidah, in her once more, as in the beginning, where Malchut would receive before the light of Yechidah. It is so because after Keter rose to the emanator, she too, Malchut, ascended in Yesod, let's say upon phase of Zeranpin, and was 1 degree closer to the emanator. Prior to that, she was in the place of Malchut. After Malchut ascended to the place of Zeranpin, there was 1 degree. She was 1 degree closer to the emanator. And now she received from him what she would previously receive from Keter. Just as she received light before, during the coupling upon phase 4, now when there's a coupling upon phase 3, she returns to receive light. However, as long as Keter did not complete his ascent, Keter was interfering between her and her emanator. And Keter himself also did not illuminate in her. It is similar in the phase of Chaya that receives from Keter, and similar also in Chokhmah, Bina, and so on. What does he want to explain to us here? It's simple, like we learned in item 70. What did we learn in item 70? If the degree departs, and it's not yet a new coupling that's made, then there's no new light yet. After it departs, a new coupling comes and shines. What is he trying to say here? Again, above 90. When Keter concluded his concealment, we will see below. It has been explained above. What is the meaning when Keter concluded his concealment? As we spoke of this, that Malchut means the screen in her. And the completion of her ascent to Yesod means that Malchut of Rosh too, where in the level of the coupling from there down expands, from there below it expands the goof, the body of the degree. So he says, in the pair which extends to the taboo, now that the coupling is done in the chotem, Zeranpin extends till Yesod, we will say, and it emerged there in the Rosh, in chotem. A coupling by striking on the level of Chokhmah emerged there. This is regarded as the completion of the ascent. What is he trying to teach us here? To explain to us. If we learn, after all, that there are places, I know that she completed the ascent and rose up to here. If we say that there are no places, then what is the meaning that it completed its ascent? Meaning that it was refined from phase 4 to phase 3 and can already receive upon free. That's considered that she completed her ascent and receives the abundance in the place she's in. This is called the completion of her ascent, meaning that there is light below. 90. Look. It has been explained above that Malchut means the screen in her. The completion of her ascent to Yesod means that Malchut of the Rosh too rose to the Chotem, and a coupling by striking on the level of Chokhmah emerged there. This is regarded as the completion of the ascent, where it already illuminates upon phase 3, it already illuminates light. Look above. Then the emanator shown the phase of Yechidah in her once more, as in the beginning. What is the meaning? 100. As he explains after she ascended in Yesod, what's that? Meaning the screen was refined of phase 4 and received the coarseness of phase 3. At that time, the screen in the pair of the Rosh also rose to Chotem, which is phase 3 of the Rosh. The coupling by striking on the level of Chokhmah emerged there and was extended from there down to the Guf. It turns out now that she is 1 degree closer to the emanator. After all, there are no places. What does it mean that she's closer to the emanator? It means that she now receives the Malchut from above, from her corresponding phase in the Rosh. This is so because now she receives from the coupling in the Chotem. And the emanator illuminates the phase of Yechidah in her once more. We learned that Malchut had before, prior to the departure, the light of Yechidah of Nefesh. So she receives again Yechidah. How? After all, the level is only the level of Chokhmah. So he explains, but on the level of Chokhmah, which is the phase of Chaya of Yechidah. Next. And this Chaya of Yechidah, since it is a degree closer to the root, more refined, which is above Malchut, became the surrounding light of Chaya in her. I'm not saying that it received a coupling as far as internal light, since she is 1 degree higher than Malchut from her discernment, which is a more refined degree. Therefore, he says a rule. Every degree that is upper towards the degree below it is called surrounding. Hence, though it receives it in internality, but why is it called surrounding? To show us that this is a higher degree in relation to herself, and only as if there are no vessels for it. As it was clarified above, it is written, now she received from him, from who? From Malchut, what she would previously receive from Keter. The phase of Yechidah, of Nefesh. Now she received Ruach of phase 3, the phase of Chaya. And hence he calls her the receiving before the phase of Yechidah, and she's also considered Yechidah. But that's Chaya, Chokhmah. Why? Since in the degree there's no more than phase 3 now. Meaning, this means that she now receives from the Chotem through the Keter of Zeranpin, as she received before through her own Keter. Here we learn 2 phases, 2 discernments that confuse us. On one hand, we learn that Malchut ascended to Zeranpin. Let's leave that. Malchut before was in phase 4 at Tabur, and then Malchut had Nefesh only up to Yechidah of Nefesh. It only received from her Keter, four Keter of hers, 5 phases of Yechidah of Nefesh. And we learned then that the Kli of Zeranpin, which has the light of Ruach, since the light of Ruach only went through 4 vessels, Ruach was in Keter, and then it descended Ruach to Chokhmah, and then it descended the Ruach to Binah, and then Ruach descended to Zeranpin. There's their Chaya of Ruach. Now that Malchut, the coupling that was in phase 4, ascended to phase 3, upon Ruach, we say the Kli of Ruach received another Kli, and now she has Yechidah of Ruach. Now, Yechidah of Ruach, which received now the Kli of Zeranpin, was added to her that which she didn't have before. Yes? What is before this? Before the departure. A little thought. Before the departure, it had Chaya of Ruach on the level of Keter. Let's not forget. Now that it received Yechidah, she had the courses of phase 3. This is still not similar to that. Now, as we learn that the original Malchut, which receives from the coupling that is made now in Yechidah of Zeranpin, that is Yechidah of the level of Chokhmah only. It turns out that she receives the phase of Yechidah now at the level of Zeranpin, but from the level of Chokhmah. This he explains to us here. So again, I am in 20. What does 20 say? Let's stay above 21. When Keter concluded his concealment, and Malchut concluded her ascent to the Siyom of Yesod, then there's a place of coupling of the Rosh that was in the Peh called phase 4 in the Rosh, upon the phase of Chotem called phase 3 in the Rosh, called the coarseness of Zeranpin. Then the emanator, the light, illuminated the phase of Yechidah in her once more, as in the beginning. It is so because after Keter rose to the emanator, and the coupling that was made, she too, below, again. Because after Keter of Guf ascended to the emanator, she too, Malchut, ascended in Yesod. She doesn't have the courses of phase 4 already, and was 1 degree closer to the emanator. Meaning, she was in a more refined degree than she was in before. What does it mean that it's refined? Bestowing. Prior to that, she had phase 4 of courses, and now she ascended and has phase 3 of coarseness, which is called closer to the emanator. Now she received from him, which is in phase 3, what she would previously receive from Keter. Before she received from Keter Yechidah of Nefesh. Now, what illuminates in Keter of Zeranpin? Yechidah and Yechidah of Chokhmah. Yechidah of Ruach, but in the place of Chokhmah. Clear? Now I'm reading it again. 100. As he explains in Internal Light, after she, Malchut, ascended in Yesod, meaning the screen of the Guf was refined and received the coarseness of phase 3, it cannot overcome anymore. And then we learn at that time the screen in the Peh of Rosh also ascended to the Chotem, which is phase 3 of the Rosh, and the coupling by striking on the level of Chokhmah emerged there. Prior to that, we learned that Malchut was in the level of Keter and was extended from there down to the Guf. It turns out now that she, Malchut, is 1 degree closer to the emanator, meaning that she now receives from above, from her corresponding phase in the Rosh. Her phase is phase 4, coarser. Now she receives closer to the emanator, more refined, because Ima is called more refined. This is so because now she receives from the coupling in the Chotem, called more refined in phase 4. And the emanator illuminates the phase of Yechidah in her once more, but on the level of Chokhmah, which is the phase of Chaya of Yechidah. And this Chaya of Yechidah, which illuminates in the level of Chokhmah, and illuminates in the Malchut of Guf, which illuminates in the phase of Yesod, period. It's lacking here. Illuminates also to the previous Malchut, which is with her level and is at the level of Tabu. That Malchut receives now the light of surrounding of Chaya. Not the Malchut which stands at phase 3 surrounding. Therefore she receives internal light. And Ruach is phase 3, which is her phase, and is against her in the Rosh. And only I am dividing it. She receives Yechidah Ruach, and Malchut, which is the phase of Nefesh. And Ruach, which is more refined, receives from the level of Chokhmah, which is surrounding. And Chaya, and this Chaya of Yechidah became the Malchut, the surrounding light of Chaya in her. It is written now, she received from him what she would previously receive from Keter. It means that she now receives from the Chotem, through the Keter of Zeranpin, through the Yechidah of Zeranpin, through Yechidah of Ruach, which emerged now upon the level of Chokhmah, as she received before through her own Keter of phase 4. There she received Yechidah. Also she received, but that was the phase of Chaya, and this is called the surrounding because this is the degree that is more refined than herself. Malchut, which ascended to Yesod, called phase 3. So the meaning is that the screen was refined and they cannot perform a coupling but only on phase 3, which is called that the Kli of Zeranpin, the Kli of Ruach, which had before only Chayav Ruach, from the manner of Keter, the coupling that was on phase 4 is added now a vessel and receives the phase of Yechidah, Yechidah of Ruach. This is considered internal.
נעבור לחלק הבא של השיעור.